You asked about targets. Yes, targets are civilians. Targets are mostly civilians. And the reason is because terrorism looks for the weak link. And they know that civilians are not necessarily military, and they're looking to attack the weak, whether they be men, women, children, anything. And that's what's going on. Well, that's what's been going on, obviously, for so many years, almost since Israel came about.
Can I pause for a second and just note that we got Brian on here who's getting Congressman Massey on, and our typical lineup includes like homeless people that believe in Bigfoot.
Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show, your source for common sense politics on the We Are Libertarians network. The Brian Nichols Show is the fastest growing liberty podcast that brings together people from all means of political thought as we seek to have meaningful conversations about the issues you care about. At the Brian Nichols Show, our goal is to leave the audience educated, enlightened, and informed. And now your host, Brian Nichols.
Well, happy Wednesday there, folks. Brian Nichols here on the Brian Nichols Show. That's right, for you YouTube listeners. You saw me. I was getting ready to jump out of my chair because I'm so excited that you are here for another fun-filled episode of the Brian Nichols Show. And if you're on YouTube, yes, you are catching us at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And for you longtime YouTube listener, guess what? We're giving it to you an entire hour early, 5 a.m. on Wednesday morning. You'll be able to catch this awesome program. And going forward, all episodes of the show will be airing at 5 a.m., excluding, of course, our Sunday Candidate Highlight series. That'll be airing on Sunday morning at 5 a.m. So make sure you go ahead. If you've not hit subscribe, you'll be catching all those episodes, though. It will be fantastic over on your podcast catcher, be it Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, wherever it may be. But with that being said, welcome to today's show. Yes, I am your humble host, Brian Nichols. You know that by now, but you are here to learn who today's guest is. Today's guest is one Marc Provisor from One Israel Fund. Now, we had Scott Feltman on the show back a few months back, talking about One Israel Fund. Today, Marc has joined the program to discuss specifically his role at One Israel Fund from defensive measures. Looking right now at what's happening in Israel, his main responsibility is to help create defensive protocols that will help protect those civilians in the greater Israeli area, Gaza area, and so forth. So a great conversation with Marc to kind of pick his brain in terms of what he sees in terms of finding different defensive measures he can take advantage of, but through the eyes of an artist. Yes, Marc's actually a very skilled artist. We're going to include the link to his art here in the show notes. So he applies this artistic mind to these defensive strategies. It's a fascinating conversation because I'm a musician. I love singing. I love just watching how music is created in terms of, whether different songs, but also just like, watching instruments like the I'm here, big nerd moment before we get started. Like how it's made. I used to watch how it's made all the time, and just like the science behind how the instruments actually work, right? Like it's just fascinating to me. But this applies to this conversation today because it's those skills that Marc takes from his art world and being an artist and applying it to actually helping real people right now, and in this case, protecting their very lives. So a great conversation. So on to the show. With that being said, Marc Provisor here on the Brian Nichols Show.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much, Marc, for joining the program. Now, for folks who are longtime listeners of the Brian Nichols Show, they say One Israel Fund. That sounds familiar, and that's because we had Scott Feltman. He is the VP of One Israel Fund, and he dug into all that One Israel Fund does. But then Rhonda, who is one of my awesome behind-the-scenes folks out there, getting some awesome guests here to the program, said, hey, Brian, I have a really interesting guest, also from One Israel Fund. And based on what's going on in the world right now, especially over in Israel, I think he would be a phenomenal fit for your show. And I said, well, Rhonda, tell me more. And she certainly did. So, Marc, it was a great chance to learn a little bit more about you. But how about this? Let's kind of set the stage in terms of, number one, who you are. But number two, for the folks maybe who aren't familiar with One Israel Fund, they're still maybe new to the program and they're getting their feet wet in this greater world here in the Brian Nichols Show. What is the One Israel Fund there for the Spark Notes? And then we'll go into your history.
One Israel Fund is an organization that focuses on assisting and working with the biblical heartland of the Jewish people and Judea and Samaria. Some people call it the West Bank. A lot of names actually for it. They work with all sorts of projects with the communities, whether they be social projects, religious projects, anything to give a better quality of life, if you will. And they also work in the security sector, helping the communities protect themselves from obviously the terror that's in the neighborhood. And I personally, I'm the director of security projects, and which is a pretty interesting job itself. And I work with that. I work with directly with the security people out in the communities to prevent that terror. That's
Right.
gist of it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, right? And I think this would be a great way to start off the conversation. And it's talking about, first and foremost, who are the people being targeted in this situation? And I think we're seeing this across the board. It's unfortunately civilians who are at right now in the crosshairs. So let's kind of start off with talking about the defense measures, I guess. You're focusing on protecting people, and it's really innocent people here in this situation. So let's kind of dig into your specific role at One Israel Fund.
All right, so I guess I'd have to go a little bit into my background.
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, when I served in the IDF as a paratrooper from 1981 to 84, fought in the Lebanese War. Fast forward to 1996 when I became the chief security officer of the region there, and that simply means that I was not only the liaison but the concept, the first responder to pretty much anything and everything. You know, whether you lost your cat, your kids lost, or if you're being attacked, or if the community is being threatened, and so on.
Right.
So obviously that I did that job until 2006, which covered the Intifada and the uprising, if you will. And that in itself was an experience. When it started, I was maybe dealing with 1 to 2 shooting attacks a day for months on end, and a very violent time. So I've probably seen and responded to more terror than most people, I guess, you'll meet. And I basically took that experience, and after a while, when I finished that job, I was consulting. My main thing is preventing terror. That's I guess you could say my specialty. And what I do for One Israel Fund is there are a lot of people that like to get involved, and the security world speaks to them. And I work with developing projects, making these projects happening to secure these communities to prevent that terror from happening. You asked about targets. Yes, targets are civilians. Targets are mostly civilians. And the reason is because terrorism looks for the weak link. And they know that civilians are not necessarily military, and they're looking to attack the weak, whether they be men, women, children, anything. And that's what's going on. Well, that's what's been going on, obviously, for so many years, almost since Israel came about. And like I said, that's the main point. Obviously, we're going through a lot of interesting times right now, especially after this so-called ceasefire.
Right. Well, how about that? Before I was going to say we go in more into your artistic background, but you just started to hit on that there. The so-called ceasefire. Can you elaborate a little bit more? What do you mean by so-called ceasefire there?
I call it a so-called ceasefire because it's like a game. It goes up and down. It's from ceasefire to ceasefire. So I don't like it is exactly that. I'm sorry. It is exactly a ceasefire, ceasing until it starts up again. And which we all know that Hamas will continue to work with that until they'll rebuild, and they will start up again, if hopefully later than sooner, but we'll see. Right now they're trying to incite the entire region.
So you obviously got a lot of your background in actually serving and experiencing this firsthand, but you bring in a different approach. You bring in this artistic approach, and this was something I thought was very interesting, marrying the two worlds, which I don't think your average person would say that those really would ever they think go together. This painting / artistic sense, and then this military defense world. So Marc, kind of dig into how you found yourself in the situation where you're able to marry both of those worlds and actually find that they're not just kind of rhyming, but they actually go hand in hand quite well.
So after when I finished my IDF service, so I went to art school, and I actually got lucky and started succeeding, where I was able to quit my day job, and I was able to support myself with art. A little while after that, when I went back, I came to the States for a couple of years, and I went back to Israel. And artists don't always sell. I learned that. Sometimes you have a good year, sometimes not. And so I decided to take on another day job. When the mayor of the community of Sheila, where I live, he said to me, look, take over our security. It's only 2 hours a day. I didn't check that out. He said, I'll give you a free studio. I heard free studio. That was it. Went in for it. Of course, the job wasn't 2 hours a day, and whatever, it developed. I see things differently. First of all, it's very interesting. Obviously, art is a very creative world, and which is creativity, something that I love, and so is counterterror. Actually, so they seem to have worked, and the way I see things is when I'm out in the field, it'll sound weird, but I see things as a painting, as composition. I will look for the shadows, for the light, for the different changes of color, and this enables me actually to see a lot of, let's say, the weaknesses in whether it be a perimeter system, a region, or something, and I take it all in. I have to say, first and foremost, really, I'm an artist. That's what I've been doing my entire life, and so I see things differently. I relate to these things differently, and by being out of the box, which a lot of artists are, I'm able to come up with different and unique solutions that most people don't think about, and it's pretty wild. The security chiefs have gotten to know that it was always a big secret that Marc's an artist, but they would see me going to an area, and all of a sudden I'm sitting out on the side. I have a 4x4. I love driving off road and getting out into the field, and I start sketching. And I start sketching and I start painting, and all of a sudden you start seeing where I perceive the threat as you would see red. You'd see the possible weakness, but just different. I'm not actually going to get into that because people will know my secret. But it seems to work with me. There's no explanation. It really does work. And obviously, a lot of the experiences I have expressed in my paintings, some of the trauma, the attacks. Along with the beauty. I haven't left out the beauty, but it's considered different and unique. A lot of high-ranking IDF officers, other people in the security world, they love coming and dropping by the studio, and where I think they want to talk about security. No, we just want to hang out, have some coffee, and discuss art. And you would never think. I mean, these are the very, very serious guys. So it just seems to mesh. And thank God, has allowed me to succeed in doing a lot of these things.
And help a lot of people. I think that's, at the end of the day, most important. And one of the things we focus on here on my show is more from a sales/solutions problem-solving mentality. And really, Marc, you're entering into this situation where not only are you able to act on something that is a talent of yours, but now you're actually able to bring that talent to real people and help them in a way that, candidly, like, words can't even begin to describe the impact that you're likely having. So maybe just to give some folks some context, because they hear, okay, he's an artist, but also he's doing some stuff with military. I'm maybe having trouble seeing how this marries together. Could you maybe give us a couple of different stories? How about that? Of examples of where you've had the chance to kind of sit down and with your artistic vision outline some defense measures or what have you that have helped people there in Israel?
There are at times, if I'm working on perimeter systems, the standard ways people look, and they will, whether using aerial photography or various tech to see what they would consider the weak points, I sometimes see things differently. I do have a military background, so I also know what things look like from the other side. So when you're painting or drawing, understanding light and dark, shadows, the various subtle changes in colors, it's an insight. I mean, if I'm painting a landscape or a model or whatever, these are things. These are necessary ingredients to the painting, to the composition, if you will. So I see things like that, and I'm able to take a system to decide, saying, you know what, a camera should be over here. I want this covered, or if it's a solution needed, I just can see beyond the dimensions that are presented. So if I decided that even in the medical field, I started seeing things that were lacking. You just look at the entire scene. It's sort of like it's painting a scene, or even doing studio work when you're looking at the various parts of what need to be put in, and that's how I apply it in security. I try to see sometimes what people don't necessarily see. Now, when an artist says see, it's not just the vision. It's don't know the word for it, but he's taking in things. And I apply these two solutions, and they've worked with whether perimeter systems that have been stopping the terrorists before developing totally crazy solutions that people wouldn't have thought about, and all in the act really to prevent terror, which is something that that I carry with me from not just from my military service during the Lebanese war and the Intifada, because I hate violence. And it sounds funny for someone who's involved in security, involved in preventing terror. I can't stand war. I can't stand violence. So I work at it that way.
Mark, don't worry. Hey, this is a libertarian show, and I don't know if you know this, but the Libertarian Party, our mascot is a porcupine, because much like the mentality you're taking, we don't like aggression. Actually, one of the very principles of the libertarian idea is the non-aggression principle, and the idea of not hurting people. Goodness, I have this for my Patreon folks here. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. And the idea of, yes, you do need to be able to defend yourself, but it's not an act of aggression, but rather an act of defense. And I think that is absolutely something that you're going to hear, especially in the libertarian camp, something, we 100% agree with. And going back really quick to the point that you were raising about when you're being the artist and you can kind of see things differently, that spoke to me in such a way, because I'm a big music guy. I love music, and I really get into the nitty gritty of music. And I actually, when you were speaking about that, I kind of saw some parallels in when I'm doing sales copy, or when I'm going through and I'm hearing a pitch from a sales development rep trying to hook an SD or hook an IT director for an appointment, and hear the flub in the value statement, or where they maybe didn't maybe answer that objection quite right. And you can kind of take the formula of music, what makes a good song, and you, right?
Absolutely. There's that, there's that common denominator. If we compare, not comparing, but if we look at composing music, at music itself, and all and painting,
right? Good
painting, not crappy painting. But you listen to music, and I paint to music all the time, and music is taking sounds and putting them together, and nuances, and connecting your heart with these things, and getting fully involved. And that's working obviously on the hearing senses. Whereas what I do, the painting, is on the visual.
Right.
It's really like that when someone's putting together a musical piece. I don't know if there are words to describe it. And that's why maybe it's called art, because it's that special thing that happens.
You can feel it almost. It's not something to really be, I guess, learned or taught necessarily, but it's just something that is innate. Yeah. Right, exactly. It's just there. It gives you goosebumps when it's good. It makes you feel when it's not good, right? But and to your point though, it does overlap into other areas of life, and it kind of is. I didn't expect the conversation to kind of go this route, but it is interesting, right? When you do incorporate the value of art and the subjectivity that you can bring to a situation, and really get different context just based on a different perspective of looking at a situation. That's such a really unique thing there, Mark.
So it's interesting how we started speaking about a little bit about music, and here you wanted an anecdote here. A few months back, so there was a woman murdered in the northern Shomron, and I won't get into details, but it was quite gruesome. And I was asked to come up and to work on figuring out a solution. So I always tell people, I'm old school. I have to see. I gotta feel the ground. I have to see it. You can't just show me a map or show me an aerial photo. I have to see it, and I have to hear it because I listen. So I'm out there. I'm in the area, and mind you, I had made a painting of it. I'm surprised it actually just sold. But it wasn't just that. But then I stopped, and I closed my eyes, and I started just listening to the sounds around me. And I was listening to the jackals in the area. Now, what was interesting is the security chief didn't know necessarily my artistic background. And he turns to one of the directors and he says, "What's with this guy?" Because I'm closing my eyes, I'm listening, because when you close your eyes and listen to music, it's very different. You take it in differently. So I'm listening to the sounds of the jackals and the various sounds of the trees, and I'm putting it together with the colors and the shading that I'm seeing. And I walked back to the guy and I said, "Okay, we have to put this here, this here, this here." And it's like sort of hit him. He said, "You're right. How did you figure?" You know what I said? I said, listen to the sounds that's going on here. The jackals that are coming, they're detecting an area where they don't feel a threat. This, you don't think that someone's going to actually notice that? And I said, let's look at the darkness over here. You want to put a camera here. You're not seeing into this shade over here. So it was interesting putting together the sounds and the visual. And thank God it's a good solution. And hopefully it'll keep people protected more.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of nerding out a little bit because I'm kind of going back to last week. One of my favorite kind of pet project. No, it's a pet project. Just one of my little pastimes I like to do is I like to go on YouTube, and if there's a song that's a very complex with a lot of different layers, I like to see the musicians break down how they did it. Now, there's a band called The Bleachers, and I've been listening more to their music recently. And he was breaking down one of the songs. It was the song Roller Coaster. And one of the really cool things he did when he was getting towards the end of the song, as he was going, here he layered in the bass, and here he was layering in the guitar, and here he was layering in the synth. And at the end, you're in the chorus, and he flipped through very quickly each individual track as a solo track. So you could hear the entirety of the song, and then for a split second, hear that individual track. And it really put it into context that all we're hearing is just quite literally you're scrolling through the different MP3 files. It's hundreds of different files that are individual sounds being pushed together to make this one gigantic, in this case, song. And it goes right to what you're talking about, Mark. When you're building these defense measures, it's the exact same thing. It's not just the black and white, putting it on paper. There has to be that context. There has to be that feeling, that the thing that you can't explain, but you're there, and it's something that you need to experience in order to actually make sure you're grasping the entirety of the situation.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. You're using all your senses, your spidey sense, whatever you want to call it, but you're using it all to put together that composition, and hopefully to get some good results out of it.
Yeah, I like it. Well, how about this, Mark? We're getting towards the end of the show already. That was a quick conversation, but we're talking about fun stuff like art in terms of music and what you're doing and applying it to actually helping real people. These are fun conversations to have. So how about this? As we're wrapping up the show, I think it would be a good chance for you to take some time and maybe just kind of outline what's taking place right now over in Israel. I know we mentioned this beforehand. It is a ceasefire, but kind of just give some context to folks who are really not aware, especially here in America, of truly what's going on, as we were talking beforehand, in your neck of the woods. So, Mark, if you could, what would that word to the folks here at the audience be?
Hamas is where we have the supposed ceasefire for now. They're trying to ignite the rest of the country, whether in Judea and Samaria, like I said, the areas where I live, and this is happening. Whether there's some attacks obviously happening. I don't know whether people are really seeing on the news. Whether there be shooting, attempted stabbings, there's been arson attacks, riots where they're coming out onto the roads. It's getting a little funky right now, and they're trying to ignite this really because they're just trying to get political power. You see, in their mindset, whoever kills more Jews, he gets more power. And this is unfortunate. This is just the way they work. And that's what's happening, and we're following it very carefully. Even though I'm here, I get my reports in all the time, and it's we're trying. And it's like we're looking at these reports and trying to go 2 steps ahead and figure out what little changes that we can make that to be better, to keep more people alive. And I think this whole thing's going to flare up again sooner than later, unfortunately. But that's in one sense the grim reality. But let's remember also, it's not when people hear about this in Israel, they think that's it. You're entering into a war zone. A lot of incredible things happening there. Incredible things. Maybe it's some of my arrogant Israeli pride, but I don't think there's a country that's putting out more good in the world, really, in terms of health and tech and various feeding people and so on. So it's a balance, and this is just one of the realities that we have to deal with.
Understood. Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, Mark, obviously I've had Scott in the program. Now having you in the program from One Israel Fund, I think this is a great conversation to keep going, obviously. And I think it's more important right now, not necessarily to just talk about One Israel Fund, but actually showing what you're doing, right? And this is one of the things I like to promote in sales as we wrap up here, is not just talking about this stuff, but actually showing and then applying what we talk about to real people, because this is how we can become the trusted advisors, the trusted problem solvers that are out there. And then when the time comes that people are looking for the people to solve the problems, they say, oh yeah, there was the people out there. I remember One Israel Fund. It was Marc. He was the one who was doing those really cool designs that were defensive and helping protect real people.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go ahead and give him a call. And I hope, I implore the folks here, especially the folks here at the Brian Nichols Show audience who have some pull and policy, if you are looking to reach out to a really good organization, One Israel Fund. And Marc, thank you for all you're doing over there. And we'll make sure we include all the social media.
Right, I have to check out some good art.
Oh, for sure. Good art for sure. And we'll include the link to your website. I had it here. It was marcproart.com. I'll include that link in the show notes. Marc, Provisor, thank you so much for joining the Brian Nichols Show.
Real pleasure. Thank you.
Alrighty, folks, that's going to wrap up my conversation with Marc, Provisor. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. I don't know if you noticed there, mid-conversation, I just nerded out because that just happened. And it's because that's what happens when you're able to, actually ask good questions and try to learn from people. Don't try to lead the conversation where you want to go. This is actually a sales thing, by the way. As we wrap up here, a little friendly sales tips, people out there. If you're in a conversation and you're trying to, have a conversation with the prospect and figure out where they've come from, and you think you have an idea of where the next step needs to go, time out. That's already the problem. You have an idea of what you want the next step to be, but you need to figure out first what the actual problem that the person has is. So ask questions, right? And that's where you can find the greatest opportunity to offer the most value, because then you're addressing their actual problem. Where can you learn this? This is all great stuff, Brian. Well, we're going to get to that in a few seconds. But first, thank you, Marc, for joining the program. I think what you're doing over at One Israel Fund is so important, and the way you're doing it is so incredibly cool. I super relate to it, and I'm sure that there are tons of folks out there who relate to it as well. So, folks, if you enjoyed the episode, please go ahead and share today's episode with anyone who you think needs to hear what they're doing over at One Israel Fund, and that is, in this case, helping protect real people right now. That's super important, But when you go ahead and share the episode, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Go ahead and share it and tag me at B Nichols Liberty, Twitter, Facebook, Minds.com, and Parler.com, just so I can make sure when I see it, I can go ahead and give your post some elevation as well. Also, if you really enjoy the episode, or if you want to go ahead and maybe give me a shout in terms of something I can do better, things that you particularly enjoy, or let's say you want to go ahead and get a guest in the show, or you represent a person running for office, or you think of a certain person, maybe yourself, that would be a great guest, email me, Brian at briannicholsshow.com. Now, I teased earlier how you can become a better salesperson with my little, helpful sales tip. Well, guess what? There's two great places you can learn how to be a better salesperson. Number one, how about this free resource I'll go ahead and give you right now? It is 4 easy tips you can implement now to help sell liberty to friends and family. And it's a free ebook written by yours truly. And you can find that over at Liberty Friends ebook. BrianNicholsShow.com/Liberty Friends ebook. The book focuses on, 4 easy steps you can take right now to very easily help sell the ideas of liberty to friends and family from a solutions-based perspective. And the reviews are in. Yes, we talked to Marc today on Chris. We talked to Chris back on Monday. Don't worry, folks. I'm okay. We're going to make it through this. I talked to Chris back on Monday, Chris Goizetta here from our Brian Nichols Show marketing. And one of the things we were talking about was that people have really been enjoying this book because it is easy to read. It's 9 pages, I believe. But it's concrete things you can do right now. If you want to use it when you're talking to your family, your friends, your coworkers, when you're out at a barbecue. And it's not threatening. It's not that you're talking about politics. What you're doing is you're playing the role of a problem solver. It makes it so much more fun, because then instead of feeling that you have to be on the defensive or on the attack, rather you're just being there as a person who's helping other people. And when people help people, I don't know, folks, I think it's a pretty wonderful thing. So if you want to help people, go ahead, get that brand new ebook, 4 easy steps you can implement now to help sell liberty to friends and family. BrianNicholsShow.com/Liberty Friends ebook. The other thing you can do is join our Patreon. Yes, our Patreon. You have 2 levels, entry level sales and account executive. Either way, It's $5 or $10 a month, but you will get one of these awesome Don't Hurt People, Don't Take People's Stuff bumper sticker. That's right, because we have to pique interest. And what better way to pique interest than get people to say, oh, I agree with that, which 9 times out of 10, if you heard on today's episode, that seems to be the reoccurring theme of not hurting people, not taking people's stuff. That tends to be our buyer persona of who's going to make a good libertarian. If we can enter into the conversation where they're like, yeah, I can get on board with that. That's a good starting off point, folks. So if you want to get one of these awesome Don't Hurt People, Don't Take People's Stuff, I can do this, I promise. Don't hurt people, don't take people's stuff bumper sticker. Head over to our Patreon. That's right, $5 and $10 a month. And you too can be one of the proud owners and help pique interest today. Coming up on Friday, here we go, folks. That's right, we're gonna make it through the end of the episode, I promise. Angela McArdle, she is returning to the program. She is the Libertarian Mises Caucus candidate for chair of the Libertarian National Committee, and she is joining the program to give her vision in terms of what an Angela McArdle candidacy and chairmanship, a chairwomanship would, I guess, look like. There you go. How about that, Angela? So we're going to go ahead and have Angela on the show on Friday. So if you want to make sure you are not missing that conversation, head over to your favorite podcast catcher, give us a 5-star rating and review, hit that magic subscribe button. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well and hit the little notification button. But with that being said, folks, that's all I have to say. I know, and I said a lot this week. How about that? Brian Nichols signing off here on The Brian Nichols Show. For Marc, Provisor, we'll see you Friday.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.